Men, what made you cry? This is gonna sound dumb, but back in college I was totally alone. Had been through some bad breakups and found out my friends weren't really my friends. Every year my friends got together and rented a lake house for a weekend. They invited my ex-fiance that year instead of me. She sent me a snap of them all sitting around, drinking and laughing, and said I'm here with all of your friends, and then just laughed. I sat in my car and cried for a long time. Don't feel dumb, that's a perfectly good reason to cry. That broke my heart. You already felt lonely from lack of good relationships with those people, and it was all cemented when they chose to invite her instead of you, and she decided to take it a step further by being a total cunt and sending that snap. I hope you've found better friends after that, and partners. Nothing like that in particular has happened to me, but finding out that your friends just aren't there for you is painful in so many ways. It takes the meaning out of things in such a fundamental way. Huge reason I had to cut out social media. Seeing my friends doing real friend things while knowing they made a conscious choice to ignore me when I needed them. Such a hollow feeling. Hope things are better for you now. I'm 30. Never seen my old man cry. My mom told me he did in the car when they had to put the last dog to sleep, but I wasn't there. But I heard him crying in their bedroom when my mom came home from work one day and woke him up. He worked nights at the time to tell him that his mom had died during an extremely routine operation. I was 16 then, and I don't think I'll ever forget that sound. We had to put down my childhood dog last year. He was 13, and we'd had him since I was in middle school. I bawled like a big damn baby. Had to have my wife drive home after that. Not a guy, and not ashamed to admit I'm a crier, but I've never cried more or harder in my life than when I had to do the same last April. Even today, 16 months later, I can be perfectly fine and happy. Something will make me think of her, and I'm a sobbing mess. I tell myself it's my way of still showing her how much she is loved. When I was in middle school I tried to take my own life. I came back to school a month later, and the first thing that was said to me was, wait, you couldn't even get killing yourself right. Worst part was it was the principal's son, and it was said in front of my teacher, who chuckled. My ex just ghosted my kids about a month after moving out. I have them 5 days a week, and she was going to take them a full weekend. They were excited. I was excited for them. Friday afternoon they are all packed and waiting and waiting. Finally, eat dinner and get them in jammies. Nobody is answering the phone. Call mother-in-law, some friends. Nobody knows anything. Get kids calmed down, and we watch a movie until they go to sleep. Soon as the last one is down, I went to the garage and cried like a baby. I had never seen them so crushed, and it broke me and became one of those transitional moments in my life I always remember when I make promises to my children. I will never ever leave them in a spot like that. My BO dad was like that. My mom did all she could. Begged him to stay connected, to no avail. She still gets upset talking about it. She busted her ass, worked 2 jobs, got her foot in the door as a temp at nights at a university, eventually getting on full time. This meant we got fee waivers to go to college. BO dad remarried, new house, new cars etc. Bitched about every dollar he had to pay. Told my sister at the orthodontist he could not afford to pay for her braces. Made her cry. I could have killed him on the spot. Take care of them. Do the right thing. You can never replace a missing parent. I'm 50 now. I will never forget what she did for us. As far as what makes me cry, I'm crying now. It felt wrong. It felt weird. Like I didn't give her a reason to say that, so it didn't make sense that she would feel that way about me. It also felt good, in a confusing way. It felt like the things I've done in my life mattered, and that I'm doing better than before. Maybe the fact that your first thought of feeling wrong was the trigger. Feeling validated feels good, but there seems to be something going on with your own self-image that just flashed into your brain, and having someone undermine that negativity you might be carrying felt like the burden of your own doubts was lifted. This guy's only group therapy thing called Boys to Men that my science teacher would do once a week. Initially I was a little quiet and unwilling to fully open up. That was until I went to this getaway weekend the organization held once a year. Basically whatever school were involved would invite boys from the circles to participate and speak their truth, which means to open up about a major struggle you have/had. So I decided why not go. Without spoiling too much, it was pretty surreal. Aside from a couple people from my school and other schools, there were some older people involved, aged from around 20s to even 60s. That felt strange at first, but they were all extremely open and willing to listen and help out. So I opened the FUCK up. It was basically my first time opening up to anyone about my mental health struggles, which had basically been going on since mid-elementary years, and also the first time I had really cried in God knows how many years. When my first wife chose another man, when my second wife died in my arms, when my third wife, divorced but still loved, died unexpectedly, and when my son committed suicide. Men don't cry, but I had no problem making exceptions in these instances. Men absolutely do cry. Part of being a man is expressing and handling emotions. Not everyone has the same reaction, so not everyone cries all the time, but men do cry and that's okay. If we didn't ever cry, how do we know we ever cared that much? My daughter was born with health complications. Emergency C-section that was especially hard on my wife. I remember people smiling and congratulating me when my daughter was born, but I just felt numb with worry. She was more tubes than baby when they let us see her. I was up for 3 days straight, and when I finally got some time alone I cried myself to sleep. Work. I was so overwhelmed and exhausted, I cried every day. Multiple times. I couldn't do self-care or tasks or fun, just work. When I'd plan for fun, I'd have to stay late. I ended up hurting myself/attempting suicide. I'm getting help now, but that's why I cry. Depression and anxiety is horrible. Times I can remember crying in the past 4 years. 2016, when we let my dog go because of cancer. 2017, when my grandfather died. 2017, when my closest friend of 3 years killed himself. 2018, when I was struggling with depression. 2019, when my daughter was born. 2019, when I intended to commit suicide because I felt I could never be a good father. 2019 to 2020, sporadic moments when minor demons get the better of my rational mind and self-esteem to tell me I'm not good enough/will never achieve my dreams/etc. My pup passed away this morning. What hurts was the fact that it was so sudden. She was a rescued dog. My mom went to the ranch and had found her flea-ridden and full of ticks on the side of the road. It seems that her previous owner had abandoned her. My wife and I nursed her back to health. She was doing great. This morning, a scorpion on the second floor of our house stung her as she lay sleeping, and there was nothing we could do to save her. She was less than 2 months old. This morning was terrible. My wife and I lost a baby at 8 weeks. I was holding it together for her. We were sitting, dazed, when the hospital chaplain arrived. She asked my name and repeated it and the meaning of it. Then my wife said her name. With a sad smile, the chaplain said Carol, meaning song of joy. That's when I lost it. Tearing up thinking about it now, over 2 decades later. I cry about everything. Sappy commercials, my kids being sweet, worry over the pandemic, the death of my daughter 7 years ago, when my wife gives me a big hug. There is nothing wrong with crying, so the question should be humans. What makes you cry? We all have the same emotions. No, there's nothing wrong with it, but I think the impetus behind the question is the fact that men do cry less than women. It's been researched, and more importantly the stigma surrounding men sharing their vulnerability like that. So of 12 years and wife for 8 who am still desperately in love with, am leaving you. And I'm gay, not bi. I'm gay. Everything we've had was just me discovering who I was. I'm in love with my best friend in Australia, who I met on the internet 5 years ago. Remember? The one who you let stay at our house for 2 weeks while she took a vacation to the USA. We finally met, and you even let us go on a trip together, alone. I swear we didn't cheat BTW. Oh, the house we've been trying to sell for 3 years. We are going to have to just do foreclosure, which will destroy our credit. Well, your credit. I'm moving to Australia with one or two of our dogs and credit doesn't follow me there. Oh, and BTW. I've never been attracted to you. Finding out my dad had been sent to a maximum security prison on a potentially lifelong sentence. Called a ripe sentence in the UK he served at HMP Wakefield. Even though he was a monster who beat me, made me fight, psychologically tortured me for not being an emotionless psychopath like himself, hurt my siblings, and did God knows what else. I still cried for days when I found out. I was only 13. I was so crushed for so long. Yet now I know he's out somewhere. I have conflicting thoughts about whether I should speak to him again. I have his parole officer's contact details, or whether I would just snap and murder him for the extensive psychological damage he's caused me. I lost my best friend, someone who I looked up to and considered a dad, since mine just didn't care much. Drove through a massive snowstorm for 3 hours to make sure we made it to the funeral. Bawled my fucking eyes out at that funeral. That was the first, and so far only, funeral that hurt so much I cried. His son is my best friend, and was my best man at my wedding. Every day that I saw him, and I went to go home, he'd always say to me, "Who loves you?" as I left. That man was one of the best people I've ever known, and still 11 years later it is always hard around the holidays. Woke up one morning next to the man I planned on marrying. Sound asleep, I got up and cooked some breakfast. Excited to wake him up so he could, have breakfast in bed, and I hear his phone vibrating. Assuming it was work, I checked it for him. There was a message from someone else. The text went something like, "Morning babe, can't wait to see you today." That's not verbatim, but it broke me. He had told me he had work that evening on the previous night. So there I am, sobbing like a baby. Breakfast in hand, and watching him sleep. Still gets me to this day. We ended things later that week. Not a man, but sometimes when my husband and I watch a heartfelt movie I look over at him, and tears are streaming, sometimes even in full sob. I find it so endearing, and it makes my heart swell up with love for him. And usually makes me cry too. Not even from the movie. It's just really nice to see a man you love in touch with his emotions and confident enough in his man self to let it show. I was talking to my friends online, like 5 to 6 of us, last night, and we randomly did a contest where we could see who could come up with the kindest compliments the fastest. All of them said the same thing: "You're the nicest person on earth. You're so kind. And you're really passionate about the things you care about." But I've heard those before, and they literally went in and out my ears. And then one of my friends says, "Your smile is so bright and genuine. It makes my day better," and I had to mute my mic to cry. That was the first time I've gotten that compliment, and it felt so good. I don't cry a lot, but I have a couple. First time I got drunk was one. Alcoholism and abuse runs in the family, and I was horrified at the thought that I had become like them. Even worse, I was on senior trip, surrounded by friends, and cried like a baby. One of those guttural hiccuping cries. I recognize the difference in partaking vs alcoholism now, but it is still one of my greatest fears. Second, when I was talking to a friend about some shitty childhood memories, I had a memory resurface that I had buried. Had no memory for 20 years that this happened until that night, and it all came rushing back. I won't get into details, but that fucked me up for the rest of the night. Still has me messed up. I saw a grown man cry today at work. He's a coworker. We teach high school. He's not great with technology, and he was getting really frustrated at trying to get an online submission program to load the proper assignment for the kids. Normally myself or one of the other teachers of the same subject helps him out, but today we were all scrambling to take care of our own stuff and we just didn't have time. By the time I finally had a break to get to his classroom to help, he lost it. As soon as I walked in, he just looked at me and started crying. I could see that he had a bunch of browser tabs open with Google searches for how to add X type of assignment in X program and things similar to that. He was trying, but he just wasn't able to get it. We learned our dog had a tumor last month. I'm 17, so I don't know if I classify as a man, but that dog is 13, so it essentially raised me. I'm currently stuck in Sweden though, because of the virus, and if the tumor turns out to be cancer, I might not get to see her again before I return to Hong Kong. I pretty much had no friends growing up, so I'm a lot closer to her than most kids are with their dogs. I didn't cry when I was told, since I usually just suck it up when I'm around people, so I can keep things lighthearted, but dang, I cried like a baby that night for the first time in years. About a year ago I was having trouble with my mental health, and I had 3 friends pass away very close to each other, so I was just a mess. I went to the pharmacy one afternoon and I saw a girl I used to date, and she was with a friend. She walked past me and walked to the next aisle and loudly whispered to her friend, "Oh my god, did you see my name? He used to be so fucking cute. He looks disgusting, holy hell that hurt." I got to my car and just bawled my fucking eyes out. It was such a punch to the gut that would not ease up. I know this story is kinda tame compared to some other ones on here, but I was just in a really bad place and it almost threw me over the edge. Be nice people. You never know what someone's going through. I work as a medical responder for my local fire department. At around 5 AM I was paged out to a heart attack. We left in the rescue vehicle and I was the only medical trained person in the truck, so I knew I had to pull my department's weight. Another department was there as well due to this home being in between 2 towns. This department didn't have an airway in when we arrived, so I took control of the airway management and helped however I could. I was even doing compressions when it was called that he was dead. After leaving the home to get out of the way of the paramedics moving the body, I saw the guy's truck and realized that it was my best friend's dad who I just watched die and was the last person to touch him before his time of death. I didn't recognize him because I didn't pay attention to his face or even think about it. I held it until I got into my car outside the fire department and just broke down crying. Seeing my mother's tears of joy after seeing me graduate from high school. My mother dropped out and put her future on hold because she had me at a young age and her and my dad weren't really seeing eye to eye, so he left us. She had to work multiple jobs and take care of me, and I know it was rough for her. Growing up I'd see her cry and be envious of her friends that graduated and is doing great in life, but even so she'd motivate me and push me to go beyond my limits. So seeing her so happy and crying while saying "I'm so proud of you" just really got to me. I cried so damn hard I could fill a river